up my other stuff too here.
Yep.
And we will. Okay, so it's thinking. Now I do have, and there hasn't been any issues with the tech so far, right? You still hear me fine?
Yeah. Yep. We're good. Yep.
Cool. So we redirect. All right, cool. So now what we're gonna do?
We're gonna hit. We'll go.
All right, so we're on YouTube now, Fritz. And what I'm gonna do? Bear with me just a second. We're gonna hit edit. I'm gonna go. The YouTube revenues are dropping like a brick in water lately because of the coronavirus. So
all the media revenues are dropping.
Are you seeing that on your own blog? And
yeah, I actually got a email from my my ad person, and they said that they're actually giving away free ads right now to a lot of companies to help them out. So they said expect your revenue to drop. You're not going to get paid for a lot of the companies that are advertising. It's just something we've chosen to do. Hope you understand and stay with us. So,
yeah. Oh, I mean,
it's reasonable. I think everybody can help out however they can help out. That's good.
I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, if people can't pay the ads and you still want them to be part of your, I mean, you can't just throw them to the freaking into the fire when things get tight. I mean, they, what I'm saying, they need you now more than ever. So all right, cool. All right, let's just bear with me just a second. All right, got 6 on now. All right, cool. So hold on. And what we're gonna do, all right, cool. And we're gonna make sure, all right, good. And what we're gonna do is put this over here. All
right. I can't see all the little names float up like you do when you're watching, like when we did the live one here in Blue Ridge when you came up and you could see the names popping up. I guess you'll be watching the YouTube station, I guess, rather than the Zoom, right?
Yeah. Well, so you can't see. Go to my YouTube channel. And
is that going to tie up bandwidth?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's fine.
Let's not do that. That's fine. That's okay. I'll let you do the shout outs when people come in. You know them all anyway, so that's cool. If anybody asks a question, you can just you can read it if we need to.
Yeah, no, right on. And I got a couple folks that moderate the channel too, so which is cool. My man Jerry from California and Tom from Maryland. And so all right, so hey Tina, K Paso. Tina, so just want to make sure you can hear us okay. And I screwed up. Hey, we got Lisa from Australia. Hey, Australia,
the land of Oz.
I had a guy, flower grower Smith or something like that from Australia, and I think he's since left the channel. I just haven't seen him around anymore. But anyway, so another Australian. Welcome aboard, Lisa. That's all cool.
They're getting up early for you.
So we got Tina from CA. We got Australia on board. Well, welcome aboard, ladies. That's fantastic. Yeah. Right on. All right, cool, man. All right, 19 on so far. So we'll just, all right, so let's, we got Daniel. Daniel says, hello, Josh and Fritz.
Daniel?
Daniel is a spreadsheet guru, Fritz. So if ever you need someone to do spreadsheets for you, this guy, he knew his spreadsheets like I know how much I love Tom Brady. This guy knows spreadsheets like that. All right, cool. We got Dennis is on board from Chicago. We got Carl on board. Carl always got a snarky comment. Glass says, hear you loud and clear. Robert, what's up, Bob? How are you, man? Right on. Scott from LJ. So Scott from LJ.
Hey, Scott, a neighbor.
Yes, sir. He was here
right up the road. That's very cool.
He was here when we did our live stream last time up there. When was that? Back in October or something like that?
When was that?
I think it was in fall, wasn't it?
Have to look. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, remember the train came in right at the end of the recording? That was so cool. We could have timed that any better. But I don't remember when that was that you came up. Might have been, probably last fall.
I think because I had just got my dog Pablo, and I know you guys do the dog stuff up there. So how's that going, by the way? Just real quick. And
good. If they go crazy, I'll see that door right behind me right there. They're all right inside that door. So I'm like, man, I hope they don't go crazy. We got 4 of them, and then right now we're fostering a rescue that. Long story, but it's actually getting adopted tomorrow. So we've got 5 in the house right now, and my wife is on dog duty, so she's gonna run them downstairs if they go crazy. I'm out on the deck with the doors closed. So hopefully, they'll behave themselves. They're great dogs. We love them.
Well, Fritz, no one wants to see you and I. They all want to see Jack and Charlotte.
That's right. So, I can bring her out if you want. Yeah.
Well, it's funny is that people know on this channel know Jackie, your wife, more than know my wife, because Charlotte's like, I had her this close to being interviewed, and then something happened, and then when I said, all right, let's go, she said, I don't want to anymore. I said, we had to. We got Bernie, Texas. All right, and Bernie, Texas. I had lived there for 3 years, so I'm a big fan of Bernie.
Very cool. My sister's in Texas, Bernie. She's out near. She just moved. I don't remember where she moved to.
South Texas or where?
No, she moved in kind of West Texas, but not like 2.5 hours west of Dallas, Fort Worth. What's the next town out that way? There's a couple colleges out there.
We got Pacific Northwest and
anyway, Pacific Northwest. Our daughter's up that way. She's in the Seattle area. So her husband's in the military up at Joint Base Lewis McChord. So in the Tacoma
let me
area.
show everybody the book here. Hey, so this is Fritz had just written this book called "The Keys to a Successful Retirement."
Funny. I have one that looks just like that.
Oh, there you go. It's the same book. Imagine that. Wow. Anyways, staying happy, active, and productive in your retired years. An easy read. And when I say easy, I don't mean that negatively, folks. I mean it's not a diatribe on technical stuff. Let's put it that way. And I was pleased by that, because the last thing I wanted, frankly, is another book on alpha and beta and I said I'm going to jump off a bridge, because it bores me, to be honest with you. I mean, all that stuff bores me. This wasn't like that at all. It was actually. Then Fritz, I haven't shared this with you before.
No, I'm interested in your feedback. You're one of the first people to have read the book, actually. Because of this podcast, we were able to get the publisher to send Josh a couple of early release copies. So I've only gotten the one pre-production version. So that you've got the very first production version right there. That's the first time I've seen it. I'm sure it's the same, but So this is some of the first feedback I've gotten. So talk away. I'm very interested in what you thought of it.
Well, I will say, so folks, I have 3. One is mine, and I have 2 to give away also. Anyway, so if you want to just put a comment in the notes when we're done, I guess you have to put a comment. Actually, how do we? Because they can't comment while we're live.
They'd have to come back in.
They have to come back in. So if that's probably, you always want to create needs. So if you want a copy of the book, come back in when we're done. I post this. And I'll just pick randomly 2 comments, and I'll mail you the book. I think it's actually good. And the reason I say I don't mean that again negatively, but there's so many books on retirement planning that you just want to drop an anvil on your head, because it's not realistic. And this is far from that. Actually, this is more than realistic, because it talks about personal experiences, which I found to be interesting as all can be. And I'm going to ask Fritz some questions on this, because I did highlight some, and I'm just going to go through, as you can see, some of the highlights I had, and kind of share some of the tidbits that I want Fritz to speak on that more so for sure. I liked it, Fritz. And the reason I liked it most is because you didn't talk about Monte Carlos. You talked a little bit about the 4% rule, but not much. And that was fantastic. That stuff just bores me, because everyone talks about it, and it's not meaningful for a human. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's not meaningful, but just there's more to retiring and more to financial planning than just some freaking college professor, if that makes sense. And that's what I liked about it, because I'm sitting there thinking, when you retire, which I'm not, I'm not, but when you retire, it's a whole different aspect of your life that a lot of people, I don't think they're prepared for. Emotionally, they might have prepared financially, but not emotionally. Hey, Tim, Pulverizer, right on, what on? And I thought that was pretty interesting. So give us the gist, Fritz. And folks, if you want to ask questions too, by all means do so. Northern Minnesota now. Give us the gist of what made you do this book, and we'll just go from there, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for the feedback. I think that's exactly the type of reaction I was hoping to get. I did intentionally write it more about the non-financial aspects of retirement, because like you said, there's plenty of content on the financial, and yet at the same time, the stuff that's in there on the financial side, I think it's tight. This thing has been through like 4 edits with the publisher. They were really, really good. So, to me, it's really tight. It's the core stuff that matters. So it's the stuff that matters and not much else. Right. So I was pretty pleased with that. Are we frozen up here? You froze on me. Can you still hear me? You froze on me, Josh. You got me now?
Yeah, we were buffering. I'm not sure whose side that was on, but let's go back. I think let's see here. I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you.
All right. So hold on just a second. Let's get back on there. All right. Yeah, it looks like we're back. Fritz, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Hold on. All right, cool. And all right, cool. So we were.
Yeah, how much did you get before we froze?
You were saying the gist of what made you start is that you wanted to do something that wasn't so technical, and then we buffered.
Okay. So basically, the value, I think that what's unique about this book is 5 years ago, I started writing my blog. So for the last 3 years of my career,
Fritz, turn your volume up if you would. I'm sorry, but it says your volume is much lower than mine. Turn yours up a little bit. Thanks, man.
You got it. No problem.
Cool. Mark says you can hear me now. Okay, cool. Yep.
Okay, that's that. Let's see. Why is there no volume showing here?
All right, it looks like we're good. Yes, you just fire away, man. It's good.
Here,
it looks
I'll just move it up. I'll move closer to the mic.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Right on.
Okay, good. I'll do that. Okay. So basically, I was able to write about the last 3 years of my career through the transition and then into 2 years of retirement. So it's a pretty interesting time period, right? That's the most fascinating part of the whole journey. Yeah. So to be able to write a book that specifically talked about everything I've learned in writing every single week for those 5 years and condense it all down into a book, that's what led me to have it be more of the non-financial stuff, because what I've experienced in my own retirement is, as much as you think the financial stuff is the stuff that really matters, it only matters up to a point. And the keys to a successful retirement, right? And to have a really successful retirement, it takes the stuff beyond the financial side, which kind of naturally led me to focus, a fair amount of the book on that.
All right. No, I get that, but so why write a book? I get that. That's for you, but you said, what, you just want to, impart your wisdom on the world, or what made you say, hey, because write a book, it's not, I've done it, and to be honest, it's a labor of love. And if you don't have the labor or the love, you're not gonna have the labor. So what was the, tell me about that. So you said, hey, just one day you pulled up, so I'm gonna write a book, or what do you think?
Well, it's interesting. I always debated whether I was going to, I've always thought about wanting to write a book. My dad was an author. He's a published author. He's written 4 books. My grandfather was a published author, amazingly. So this is now the 3rd generation of published authors.
Your dad and your granddad are both published authors?
Is that crazy? My grandfather, yeah, good question. That's where I was going. My grandfather wrote German poetry, which sounds really weird, but he's got a published book. And he grew up speaking German in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Dutch area. They still spoke German in the home, so funny story, during World War II, the whatever the predecessor of the CIA was, they were actually talking to the neighbors because his German was so good and they had so many connections back in Germany. They were kind of keeping an eye on him, saying, hey, just look, if this guy has any strange visitors, if they're, they thought he was a German spy. Of course he wasn't, right? But yeah, he was that German. So anyway, he wrote German poetry. And then my dad was a history professor for 38 years. So he wrote 4 history books about the college where he taught and the history of the college. He's always been a Civil War nut. So a lot of his books focused on the guys from the college that served in the Civil War. All that to say, 3 generations of published authors. That was always kind of one of my goals. I kind of always wanted to have a book. At the same time, I didn't really want to go through all the hassle of self-publishing and finding somebody to do the cover. So the opportunity just presented itself with this publisher, and it was a match made in heaven. It was meant to be, and I'm very thankful to have done it. And it is a lot of work, but there's something about, I love to write. I write a blog, obviously, so I've always enjoyed writing.
That's a good point.
And there's something really special when you've written a blog for 5 years. To be able to change and get into writing a book, it's a really different mental process, because you're able to dig deeper onto topics, be more expansive, and yet it's still concise, right? But it's much bigger than a blog post. So it was just a nice addition to my 5 years of blogging. So it was a natural fit.
On the book, did you find, just picking your brain here, that people were like, there was an abundance of one type of financial planning book and a sparse of this type, which is more of the, I hate to say the heart, because I don't want to sound like it's, what I'm saying, but did you find like there's just not that much, like in your own considering of retiring? Yeah. Everything's focused on the money. You're like, but there's more to it, I think. Is that what you found? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's a bit of a desert. I mean, it's not a desert. There's always some water, right? But I think what you're starting to see.
Buffering again. Hold on a second, Fritz. Buffering. Hold on a second. Jeez Louise. Man, that's annoying. Oh, something happened. Hey, we're back. Hold on a sec, Fritz. Let me unmute you. I think we still might be.
So they're testing.
Yeah, no.
Wow. My internet just totally blanked out. It was like it disappeared on my computer even. So we had a glitch of some sort. Sorry about that.
No, man, it's all good. I just we're gonna get through this once and for all. That's all there is to it. Yeah. So some guy said Scott from LJ said he had similar issues with his meeting up there. So maybe it's who knows, man. But anyway, I will put a link to Fritz's book. Absolutely. And of course, if you use my link and buy his book, I get paid big bucks. That's what we're here for, is to make sure I make money. Oh, are we buffering again? Technology is great when it works. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me all right, hold on a second. He's back. Hold on a second. He's back. I can see. There you go. Oh, you want? Oh, cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. Good.
Just down, try it on my phone.
Wait, say again. You want to call?
No, I'm going to try.
Oh, okay. No, we're back.
Start video. Let's just try it this way and see how it works. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. Absolutely.
I'm going to leave it here.
Hold on a sec. Let me get you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Well, that sounds even better right there. Absolutely.
Well, be flexible. That's one of my keys to a successful retirement is be flexible. So we're going to pitch all this and we'll do it on here.
Dude, that sounds even, be honest with you, that sounds even better, man.
Good. And so there's a retirement lesson in practice right there.
Hey, man, you gotta, I mean, it's just adapt and overcome. That's what we used to say in the Army, man. Adapt and overcome.
That's it.
No, that's all good. So Theo says, sorry, Josh, I reckon too many folks online would be at home. No, we're good. We're good. It's just we're gonna get through this, because I appreciate y'all staying here, folks. I really do. I was watching a Dennis Miller. He was being interviewed by what's his name, the Rubin guy from New York City.
Yeah, Dave Rubin.
Yeah, Dave Rubin, and there was buffering like crazy. And Dave Rubin's down in Los Angeles, and Dennis Miller's in Los Angeles, so they were buffering like crazy too. So.
You know, part of it, I think, with everybody working from home and everybody self-isolating and everything, I've noticed that here our internet speeds are way down. There's a lot more traffic right now than there is normally.
Can I skip? I want to ask you something. I know I'm going to forget this.
Sure.
think you just said that, self-isolating, and I wanted to draw your attention to what I thought was in this day and age very important. I'm just going to kind of go on this, and this breaks my heart. I did a video today, Fritz, on two Air Force Academy cadets taking their own lives because of isolation. You know what I'm saying? Now we can't blame. We don't know exactly why they took their own lives. I'm not going to sit there and say it's because of social isolation. But then you read what the you read what they had to go through. It was imprisonment. There was no other way around it. It actually made me mad. In your book on page 96, finding your path. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's not what I want to talk about. Hold on a second. I want to go into this one. Bear with me just a second. This is going to be right here. Depression. Retirement from work has depressed many a man and hastened his death. And then he say, you read a study by the Institute of Economic Affairs that found a person's probability of suffering from clinical depression goes up by 40% after retiring.
Yep.
Other studies to confirm that the reality of depression is more likely in retirement than during a person's working years. That bothers me significantly, especially in this day and age. And I hate to just skip forward, but that was something I really want to talk about. This day
jump in, yeah.
When you are retired, you talked about Jackie's milder depression, and I don't want to put that adjective, but you said that in your book. I don't want to talk about her, but I want to talk about, have you seen that, just as you're now hanging out with retirement people and are doing a blog literally called the Retirement Manifesto? Are you seeing that, or just give me more on that, because I find that to be important.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little bit of context for why I got into that. I was probably 2 years out from retirement, prior to retirement, when I started looking into, like, what's the difference between people that have a good retirement and people that struggle. And one of the things that I found was this issue of depression is really common post-retirement. And what the research says, I'll take it for what it's worth. I think it's probably valid. The people that are most likely to suffer are the people that are kind of type A, hard charging, driven, right up until the end. They don't either want to accept that they're going to retire, or they just love their job, or they just, whatever it is. They don't go through that mental process of preparing for retirement. They just keep doing their work 110% right up until the day they retire. And then they retire, and they just kind of go off a chasm, and it's a big adjustment. So that's the typical profile, or the most common profile of people that struggle. And I definitely have had some readers that have contacted me, and absolutely they've had the very similar struggle, and they fit a pretty similar profile. So I'm sure, it's a generality. I'm sure there's a wide variety of people that have those types of issues, but if you fit that profile, that's where you really have to be careful and take to heart some of the stuff in the book.
Yeah.
Because that's really a lot of the stuff in this book is how you avoid a tough transition, and how you make it the smoothest possible transition into your new life of retirement.
Well, it kind of leads perfectly into what Jackie went through. Tell us, if you don't, look, she's not here to quote, but you wrote about it in the book, so obviously you got permission from her to. She went through this, but a different way, because she's not the typical type A corporate guy going out there kicking butt and taking names, but she went through herself. So share that. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, and it's really, like you say, it's not a stereotypical retirement, right? Our daughter is 25 years old now. So when we had our daughter, we had decided way before, that when we had our daughter, my wife was going to be a stay-at-home mom. It's something that was important to us, and we made it happen. We always lived on just my income. We saved hers. We never got into payment obligations that required her to work, blah blah blah. So she was a stay-at-home mom all the way through our daughter's time at home. And about a year before our daughter went off to college, we had my mother-in-law move in with us because she had Alzheimer's. So my wife started taking care of her, and she cared for her for probably another 3 or 4 years. And then my mother-in-law got to the point where she had to go into a nursing home, and my wife continued to be her, very close caregiver. She was there 3, 4, 5 days a week, every week, probably 5 days a week, every week. And I retired in June, July, and my mother-in-law died in September. Okay. And shortly after that, my blog was doing great. I'm loving this new retirement thing. I'm on cloud 9. I talk about it in the book, that honeymoon period. I was in the middle of the honeymoon. I was loving life. And suddenly my wife was just kind of in a funk, and she said it wasn't really depression. She just felt kind of off kilter, and she couldn't really figure it out. And in hindsight, what we recognized was kind of her job was caregiving, for all those years. And when it stopped suddenly, it wasn't that different from a type A personality that doesn't accept the retirement and all of a sudden it's here. Well, she never really recognized that was kind of her purpose, was caregiving and to keep taking care of her mom and taking care of our daughter. So it was kind of a similar thing. And the way she got through it is one of the case studies in the book. And, she started a fantastic nonprofit. It's been hugely successful and she's on cloud nine, now she's in her honeymoon and everything's great. Yeah. But it was a good example of kind of how that can play out in a non-traditional way. And I think one of the takeaways too is recognize that retirement is as big a deal for the spouse, whether it's a stay-at-home or working spouse, it's as big a deal for both of you. It's not just the person that's working and leaving the workspace. If you've got a stay-at-home spouse, it's just as big of an adjustment for them. So
there's a part in the book too, and I'll butcher this, but the guy was kind of criticizing his wife, the way she's loading her dishes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my buddy Carrick, yeah.
And it's funny because when I was working from home when my wife was a stay-at-home mom, when I quit my crappy old job to start my business, 2 years ago. And it was interesting because we had this, it wasn't a fight. It was more of a meeting of the minds where she goes, when I was at home and you're at work, I just got used to that because we have 4 kids, 18 years of raising the kids. And now all of a sudden, everywhere I turn, there you are.
Yeah, she said, very similar.
Yeah. She's like, I'm not saying I don't like it, but I don't like it. I need, what I'm saying? So it was interesting because I thought, initially I was kind of taken aback. I wasn't all that offended. It takes a lot to really offend me that much. But I was like, okay, that was interesting though. But all that kind of stuff, my stay-at-home wife, whose job was to raise the kids, are now getting, they don't need constant attention. Now here comes Josh, and I'm everywhere, and she's like, kind of violating my personal space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I bet a lot of people can relate to this discussion right now too, especially with self-isolation, right? A lot of spouses are spending time together that didn't see it coming. They weren't, they were both working, or one was working, one was home, but nobody plans for a pandemic, right? And all of a sudden you're home all the time, unplanned. I would bet there's some people that kind of can relate to that. It's a little bit different situation, but I bet the dynamic is somewhat similar. So,
and on those book, which I thought was too interesting. So I think you said feel like you're giving 80, you want both the spouses to feel like they're giving away 80%. I forgot. Tell me what that was interesting. It was,
this was advice we got from a good friend of ours back when we were first married, and it always stuck with me. He said, in a marriage relationship, you should feel like you're giving in, or, you're giving the other person their wishes 80% of the time. He said, because realistically, your spouse probably feels the same way. If you feel like, oh, it's about 50-50, or, I'm doing pretty good, I'm winning more than I'm losing, you gotta back off a little bit and find a better way to compromise it. You should feel like you're giving in the majority of the time. That's pretty good signal for you're giving it about the right balance. It just always stuck with me, so I put it in the book.
Actually, I think that's I think that's incredible. And the reason I say it is because sometimes I feel like, I do a lot of dishes, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I feel like, man, and then actually it's interesting. I never thought about the 80-80 rule, but my wife thinks she's doing, you know what I'm saying? It's just relationships. But I said that's what I love this book, Fritz. You bring crap to the table that no one else talks about.
Yeah.
That when you think about it, you're reading you fly through this freaking book. It's so, literally I read it in a day. And I read it obviously because I was like, I want to have a discussion, but it's so easy to read, but it's worth it because you're thinking, I never thought about the 80-80 rule, but I remember distinctly my wife's, because I think I do more of the dishes. I said she should give me credit for that. And she thinks she does more of this. And I should give more. And, it's just, it's the nature of the beast. You're in a relationship and you see things a little bit differently. But I said, I never thought about that. If you feel like you're giving more, that's actually probably a good thing because then your spouse probably feels the same. You're probably kind of doing really 50-50. I thought that was fantastic. That was worth the fee. Of course, I got free. Just real quick, guys, don't forget when we're done here, just put a comment in the note. You can't do it live. I don't know why YouTube doesn't let you do comments live, but I got 2 books to give away. So put a comment in the notes here when we're done, and it can just be book or what. I don't care what you put. You can say Josh, you're ugly. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you want, and then I'll randomly pick 2 people will get the book. Now, of course, the guy who says he loves Tom Brady will get the book. I'm just joking, but you just put a comment in there.
You still love Tom? You still love Tom Brady even now?
Man, we got 6 Super Bowls, brother. You got to.
I hear you. I hear you. Hey, thank you for giving away the book. So I'm really glad we could work that out with you, and I'm really glad your listeners are going to have a chance to take a look at it. It's coming out May 5th. Not to promote the book, but just so the other people know, it's coming out May 5th. You can find it on Amazon. You can go ahead and pre-order it now. My publisher is actually encouraging pre-orders as much as possible. Apparently, that helps the Amazon algorithms to get you up. And we want this thing to launch, pretty close to page 1 under retirement. So anybody wants one pre-order, if you would, that'd be great. But
Tim just said he just pre-ordered. Good job,
right,
Tim. I love it. No, promote away, man, because Mary, who I love, Mary, she's one of my best YouTube buddies. She's up in Connecticut, and she just said can't wait to read it too. You can get it on Kindle Unlimited too for free. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Fritz, but
no.
Oh yeah, so Kindle Unlimited. If you have a membership for Kindle Unlimited, it's like $9 a month or something like that. All my books are for free on Kindle Unlimited, and you can get it for free. And that actually does pay Fritz. Believe it or not, I don't know how much it pays you, but it does. I'm probably making $400 a month on Kindle Unlimited. On my book. So it can pay. So if you pay the Amazon, $10 a month or whatever it is, you get a significant amount of books you can read for free, and then yours is on there too. I did notice that. So
very cool. The other advantage of the Kindle version is it'll actually come out a week before the physical book. Okay. So the Kindle version comes out, I think, April 21st or something. So it will be out a little bit earlier. And I think there may be an Audible version that's going to take a little longer. They outsource their Audible to some company, and they're having discussions about whether or not they're going to turn it into an Audible. But I think hopefully they will. If we get enough orders and looks like it's going to be a popular book, they'll go ahead and put it into audio format as well.
Oh yeah, they definitely should. There's no reason not to. I mean, literally no. I mean, if people want to buy it through audio, there's absolutely no reason not to, for sure. All right, so let's talk more about some of the stuff I found in the book. I did. So I'm just going to go through some of the stuff, Fritz. And if by all means, what I like is Fritz has a bunch of retirement tips. He got a whole bunch of them, which I thought was pretty interesting. I like that. And again, it's an easy. You can see the font in this. It's actually quite easy on the eyes. CA says another pre-order of your book. I mean, that's freaking awesome. I hope we can get, because Fritz is one of the good guys in this business. Fritz reached out to me. I did a video on one of his blog posts, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, you did a video on my blog." I was like, I hope I didn't say anything too negative. And he said it wasn't like that. And then I found out Fritz lived right up basically an hour away up the way. And it's cool. It's one of the good guys in the business. And look, I always bash the business. There are lots of good guys in the business, but I like people in the business who don't focus so much on the specific numbers of everything, because the numbers can always be wrong. I mean, for heaven's sake, just look at what happened in the last couple of weeks. We were down 36%. Now we're back up 27%. You can't, the numbers are forever changing. The one thing isn't changing is that if you retire and hang it up, I hate to say it, Fritz, but you're never going back to that job you just left. You're an old guy. You know what I'm saying? You're never going to go back. And so you've got to make this work. I do want to talk about healthcare. And this is one thing I get questions on a lot. I already got a couple of questions on this. So let me bring to your, on the healthcare stuff. I have
a section in there about exactly that topic. Yep. It's under the, what to do when the paycheck stops. It's in that chapter.
This is on page 82. You just have I don't know if this is the same chapter, but I just want to read a little bit. For those living in the U.S., health insurance is likely one of the big. Is that what you're talking about?
Different place than I remembered it. So yeah, that's right. You're right.
Concerns about private health insurance are often cited as the primary reason for people to decide to continue working until they become eligible for Medicare. Personally, I find it depressing that people are working solely for the sake of health insurance. Yes, I couldn't agree with that more. So you talk about how you budget 25, and you're still on COBRA right now, right?
My COBRA just expired actually in December, so I moved on to an Aetna market plan. Basically, I went to an Aetna plan. It's a retiree group plan, but the employee is responsible to pay for it. So I was like, hey, it's still better than the open market price. It's about $2,000 a month, so it's like that's okay, a little bit under my budget, so I'm okay with that.
Your previous employer?
It was my previous employer. At one point, they had retiree medical, like a lot of employers did. They discontinued it, like everybody else did, when the Affordable Care Act came out, because then people could get pre-existing conditions covered. They didn't feel the ethical responsibility, blah, blah, blah. So they basically kept the policy available, but they discontinued paying for it.
Okay.
So I basically had that as one of my open market options.
Gotcha.
And when I compared that to the, the normal ACA policies, it was a little bit cheaper because it was a group plan.
Gotcha.
But but it's basically a group plan, or it's an open market plan.
But a little bit cheaper, still costing $2,000 a month, whereas you had in your book we're budgeting 2,500. So either way, it ain't cheap. You know what I'm saying?
Big money.
Yeah, all the same docs and everything. So let me ask you a question: when you were looking at ACA versus what you ended the group plan, what did you find with the ACA? I mean, were you able to see if the docs that you typically use, your primary care physician, all that were in there, or what? I mean, what's your thoughts on
yeah, we basically saw the price difference, so we kind of focused in on this plan when we got to that level of details. Like, okay, let's look at it and see if we can live with it. And we did have to change some doctors, so it's unfortunate. Now the reality, we've only been up here a couple of years, right? When you came up, you've been to Blue Ridge, great area. But we didn't have like a lifelong relationship with the doctors anyway. So it's inconvenient, but it wasn't catastrophic. We were willing to make the change to go with the doctors that were in the plan.
I've noticed a lot of docs, they'll take, they'll, what's this? If you're already in the plan, they will keep you in the plan if you go to ACA, but they won't accept new patients. That's what I'm starting to see more and more now. Okay. And I don't know that to be, I'm delicious, just out of pure ignorance. I just know here in Georgia, when I was looking up stuff, they said not accepting new patients, but they did accept the Blue Cross ACA. So I found that to be interesting because if you change over, you still could be in the system if you want to keep your doc, you could still be in the system. But if you move, let's say you move to the freaking Nashville, you're gonna have a whole new set of docs that might not take you because you're not already enrolled in there, if that makes sense. So that'd be before you move, make sure, and I'm not talking to you, Fritz, I'm just saying in my head, I haven't retired. I just know before you move or before you go on ACA, if you want to make sure that there's some docs that will take you because you're a new patient. A lot of docs might not, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, the other thing I touched base on there, you mentioned about how I find it personally kind of depressing that people are working solely for medical insurance. I get it, right? It's a big nut, and you got to do what you got to do, right? But the other thing I do address in the book is the whole Christian health share, approach. And I give some resource. Hey, there we go. Man, that looks just like, I gotta get our Naimi. She looks just like that. That's crazy.
Does she?
Yeah, we gotta do a dog show here, Josh. This is too funny. Except my dog would go crazy if I open that door. So we're not gonna.
Chiweenie? What kind of dog is it?
She's got some Chihuahua in her, but she's got something like a terrier. So she's a big Chihuahua, which is about what you got there. She looks like a terrier. So very simple. That's too funny.
This is Pablo, and we love him to death. He literally is my financial planning partner. He tells me what to say, Fritz. So he says, Dad, because he calls me Dad. He goes, Dad, make sure that you don't forget to talk when you're talking to Fritz about this, that, and the other. So he's just reminding me of the things to say.
Cool. Good assistant.
So anyway, you're saying it's a tough nut to crack, $2,000 a month, and then you're saying something till Pablo.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do list some of the health share ministry options and things like that, and why. The things you have to be careful with if you go that route, but it is a viable option, if you're really trying to seek a more cost friendly alternative. Yeah. And I've got a lot of resources. There's a whole section in the back of the book that's just on retirement resources. And I list a lot of the health insurance resources. That's a big topic. So I really tried to put some meat on the bone behind it, because I know it's one of the big issues people are struggling with.
Oh, big time. It's and it is. Can I ask you, how much did it cost when you're on Cobra versus what you're on now? Roughly the same?
No, Cobra was a little bit cheaper because the employer actually paid 50% of the Cobra. Oh. So they gave you a break on the Cobra, and then they, so it was cheaper because of that. So
Dean says $2,000 a month seems really expensive. Is that normal? Yeah, Dean, I really believe that's normal. We were on Cobra. We left USAA and it went to now mind you, it was health. Teeth, whatever, the whole thing, you know what I'm saying? It's $2,100. That was just Cobra. And then when we looked at ACA, it's going to be $1,900 a month just for health. That wasn't without prescription or teeth or eyes. Yeah. And so 2,000, and now I have a family of 6. Fritz is just a family of him and Jackie. So
we do have dental. We include dental in that. So we do have a dental plan. but the dental's pretty cheap, relatively speaking. The medical's what you pay for. So
the yeah, right on. And then the health, eyes is not that expensive. You don't really necessarily all need that even, but still, at the end of the day, $2,000 a month is when I do retirement plans, Dean, for folks. We're saying about, basically, $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month, depending on states they live in and depending on what they think they need. I think you would be smart to think about $2,000 a month for sure. Now, be advised when you go on Medicare. I mean, it's a significant drop off, but you still got to get Part B, Part D, and ideally a Medigap policy. So you're still looking at about $350 to $400 a month per person. A significant drop off, but it's not like Medicare is free. That's for sure. So
and probably by the time we get there, it's going to be increasingly means tested, right? So it's not going to get cheaper for Medicare. So
Larry says, is it a high deductible health plan that you have? By chance?
Yep.
It is.
HSA. Yep.
So yours is a high deductible health plan. It's still $2,000. Whoa.
Yep.
Nuts, man. That's nuts. And are there any docs?
But it's actually cheaper if I looked at the ACA, the straight, when you go onto the ACA website every year when you're signing up, you can pull up all the quotes and you can see all the detail without having to commit to anything. And we were looking at closer to $2,500 on all the ACA plans. So I don't know if it's this area. We're in Appalachia, right? I'm up in the foothills, not in the foothills. We're in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. So I would imagine there's probably some, factoring in of the geography and the average health condition. Who knows, right? But I mean, like you said, it's very regional. It's very state specific. It's probably county specific within the states. So
that is interesting. That is interesting, Fritz. I wonder if, because you're up, in the rural area of Georgia, there's just not that many people around. Interesting. All right. So let's keep going. That's a big one. And there's no right answer here. The issue is, I guess if one thing I would suggest to people, there's nothing wrong with going to work in some job, and then, let's say 6 months and you say, it's just not worth it, but you wanted to go to get health insurance and you're just going Cobra, man. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Here's what I look at, Fritz, and some people might find this to be disingenuous and frankly, don't care. You got to take care of number one. I mean, we know that no one else is going to take care of you other than you. It's just not going to happen. And so if you're worried about healthcare, but you're in a crappy job that's depressing you, that's literally driving you into the ground, well, go find some other job, work there for a couple months and jump on their group plan. Yeah, you're going to have to pay Cobra if you quit. But I mean, you're paying for it. They're not going to pay anything for it. Like when I left USA, I was on Cobra. It cost me $2,100 a month. I paid the whole thing. It's not the worst thing that ever happened. I mean, it's kind of like I say at the end of the day too. Look, if you got $80,000 of hospital bills and you can't pay it, well, friggin' file bankruptcies. I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of these hospitals, they pick and choose winners. And if you're not the winner, then why should you pay the full brunt of the hospital bill when many other people are getting it written off? So you got to take care of number one. That does not mean you lie, cheat, steal, but no one else is going to do it. And it's just, you only have one life here, man. One life. And if you're living it right, I'm a God-fearing guy. So I know at the end of the day, we're all going to have to account for our sins. But, if you're driving yourself in the ground or you're being abused at work, get the hell out of Dodge, even if it means you don't have health insurance right out of the gate. I'm sorry. It's one of my...
Even if you jump onto like a health sharing thing, you can get those for $300-400 a month. I mean, they're cheap.
We're on that, Fritz.
You have more risk because they're not obligated to cover things, but there are options. If that's the only thing keeping you. The other thing, I was talking to a guy up here. You know what he does? He drives a school bus. He goes, man, the county school insurance is awesome. He says, sure, I drive a school bus, but who cares? It's morning and afternoon, it's a couple hours, no big deal. I got the summers off. And he said, I got free health insurance. It's awesome coverage. So there's always a way to go around it,
Absolutely. And we were on MediShare and actually liked it. I was very pleased with it. But the problem is we were concerned because we have some kids with allergies and stuff like that. So we're just not sure if, and significant allergies. I said, I'm not sure if that will be covered. So we got on it, but it was my wife decided to take a job working for a CPA firm, and she's working, less than 40 hours a week, but more than 30. So she gets coverage, and she pays the whole thing. But it was worth it to her to get out of the house away from me.
That's the real reason she did it.
I know. And they got these, boyfriend and girlfriend at work. Wait, they saw work wives or work dad or work husbands or something like that. Like, I never had that when I was at work, sister. Where's this coming from? You tell me something I don't need to know. All right, so let's keep talking about the book here. And I'm just going to ask you some more stuff here. And by all means,
fire away.
I like this on page. I'm not sure it's going to be your same page, page 36. You say you don't retire until you have bucket one fully funded. Man, I could not agree with this more. So let me just read it. Don't retire until you have bucket one fully funded and enough cash on hand to avoid selling stocks in a bear market. So talk about that. I think especially what we're dealing with right now, it might be a little bit hindsight for some folks, but man, I think it's so important. So talk about that if you would, Fritz.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. I mean, I've been a big proponent of the bucket strategy. I think that's the post that you first did a review of when you and I first connected. You were reading my bucket review post. It's actually been the most popular, the most read post on my site. I think it's been read like 60,000 times. So a lot of people have read the bucket strategy post. And I, it's not new. People know it. Basically, bucket one is 3 years of cash, plus or minus, but I'll use high level numbers. Bucket two is like another 5 to 7 years of kind of bonds. And then bucket three is everything else, which is pretty much your equities, right? But the trick is it's easy enough to understand, but what isn't always intuitive to people is don't retire until that first bucket's full. You don't want to get into retirement and then start trying to adjust your asset allocation to get it all set, because heaven forbid it. And I've got readers of mine that retired in like February, and they were like, we were so thankful that we listened to your bucket strategy because man, we were a month into retirement when this thing hit, right? In my case, not only do I keep it full when I retire, but I've been retired 2 years now. And I basically have been refilling it like every 3 months. I'll kind of look at what I spend each month, and then we kind of know, okay, that's about how much we've drained it down. Let's go ahead and move. Stocks were on a tear. We all knew that this bear was coming at some point. And I'm like, hey, my opportunity cost is pretty minimal to move, a couple months worth of spending into it. Just keep that sucker topped off. And we kept it full all the way through. And we just sold a bunch of stocks in like December and January, topped everything off. Actually went a little bit long. I don't normally try to time the market, but I was just a little bit nervous. And we had plenty of cash on hand, 3 years, 5 years after that of bonds we can sell. This whole volatility thing in March, I was actually buying. It didn't bother me in the bit. I'm totally comfortable with it, because I know by the time we're going to have to sell some of those stocks, we'll be well past the rebound at that point. So it works.
And it also alleviates the fear of going to bed at night, wondering how you're going to make the next month's mortgage payment, whatever you don't have a mortgage. So that's another part that is essential, but it just alleviates the fear. You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you going to pay the mortgage if everything you have is tied up in the stocks, and the stock market literally is down 36%. Never so fast or violently have we seen that. It's an insane drop off, and we're not out of the woods yet. But so it's funny you said that, because I had the same thing on my channel. Just people, actually, it was interesting. Same thing. People saying I followed your look. I guess I'm kissing my own butt here, but a lot of women, widowed or single women, said they followed it and they had enough cash and they sold, like you said, Fritz. And it's just the financial planning 101 is not Fritz being so smart or me being so smart. It's intuitively obvious. If you have enough cash to cover 2 to 3 years of income, you don't need to sell stocks when they're down 36%. It's just some people have a way to do it via video that helps people understand that. Some people have a way, 60,000 people did it on your blog. It's just a different way of communicating, but the communication isn't from Fritz or Josh being so smart. It's just experience and following the inherently obviously strategy that you don't want to sell stuff when it's down. No way.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I think, the opportunity cost of that is pretty minimal, right? I mean, at that point, if you look at your entire portfolio, you got 25 to 30 times your annual spending, whatever, your formula is. The actual opportunity cost of taking a couple of years of that and keeping it in cash, it's not that big of a price to pay. And the pay, it's kind of like insurance, right? The payback is now you're sleeping well at night. Okay, good. That was a good investment. I got my payback. So
I could not agree more. I couldn't agree. So Ray says, what do you think about pounding the max into an HSA, not touching it, and then using it as a milk cow when you access A and B? Any thoughts on that? So just are you doing anything with HSA, or what do you think?
I max it out obviously every year because it's tax free, right? So you get a whatever your marginal tax rate is, you get that much of a cut on your medical bill. So yeah, we obviously we fill it up every year. Whether you park it there and let it grow, you can. My feeling is ultimately, if I did that, at some point I'd be tapping into my IRA money anyway. So it's like, well, just spend the HSA as I go. And I'm doing some Roth conversions on the IRA. So that's kind of a strategic amount that I want to move over. So I'm letting that kind of be managed that way. And I'm just using the HSA money. Yeah, he's right. I mean, technically you could do that. A lot of people do. Nothing wrong with it. You get the tax benefit, the tax deferred growth, tax deferred withdrawals. You might have to keep all your medical bills in a shoebox for 10 years until you want to file the claims against it. But it's a viable option. No, nothing wrong with it at all.
Do you include, this is actually a good question from Carrie. Do you include your emergency fund in bucket one? I think you actually addressed that in the book. So talk on that a little bit.
I do. I didn't want to get into that level of detail, but I'll keep it high level and touch on it. It's the approach I came up with. You're going to have what I call the expected unexpected, right? You're always going to have unexpected expenses. So expect them, right? Plan for it. You're going to have an air conditioner that breaks down. You're going to have a roof that needs replaced, etc. So what we did is we totaled up and I got this out of a Wall Street Journal book that I was reading, and I like the concept. You basically add up all your stuff. So you say a roof, I'll just throw numbers out here. Let's say a roof is 15 grand and it lasts 15 years. That's $1,000 a year. Okay, so that's $100 a month. And then you look at a car. Okay, I'm going to replace a car every 10 years. Do the math. That's another $200 a month. You add all, and I have that in the book.
Yes.
And you total all that up. And in our case, looking at all the things that could break, it came up to about $1,000 a month. So what we did is we said, okay, we know our safe withdrawal rate. We're trying to be 3.5% or less. We just reduced that by $12,000 so that we wouldn't overspend when the unexpected expenses happened. And we set up a reserve at Capital One. You can set up segregated accounts. So we set up a segregated account at Capital One. We put $12,000 in there on year one. We spent out of it in any emergencies during year one. Beginning of year two, we put another 12 grand in there. And we know kind of rough numbers that will always be there to handle the big unexpected. And we live off the rest of the safe withdrawal rate amount. But even if something catastrophic happens, it keeps us within the overall safe withdrawal rate that we're trying to hit. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to talk through it, but you're right. You do have to have emergency reserves built in. And I'm very specific on how we built it in on the what to do when the paycheck stops chapter in the book.
And page 31, I'll just read you the quick and easy. As we spend down bucket one, we periodically refill it by selling stocks and bonds from bucket two and bucket three, depending on how the markets are performing. Actually, that's okay. No, that's not what I want to read. I had it highlighted about what you said there. Oh man, what did I put? Oh, right here. There it is. Yeah. Right here. Oh, this is fantastic. And you can see some of my highlights there. So I doubled asterisked it. I said a word about irregular but not unexpected expenses. Let's say your furnace dies and you're on the hook for $5K furnace replacement, or your car dies and you're suddenly looking at $30,000 to replace your car. What is the best way to handle this? In our case, we set aside $12K in emergency spending account to which will add $12K every year. I calculated the $12K by looking at what the unplanned expenses should be expected. For example, if you expect a $5K furnace to last 15 years, you calculate $5K and divide that by 15 years. That's $333 a year. A $30K car driven for 10 years is $10K residential value with residual value. So I never heard of it. Basically amortized the lot, almost like if you're a business owner, you're taking depreciation on a rental property. You're basically amortizing it and depreciating what that means for your monthly amount or your annual, however you want to do it. And I thought that was fantastic because it's like there's more than just saying, I think I need $10,000. Well, how do you know that? I mean, because let's think about a cost, $10,000 for a new roof, $5,000 for a furnace and whatnot. And how do we amortize that based on the life expectancy of those products? I thought that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And actually one more piece on that, Josh. I'm glad, by the way, we gave the same answer since I was winging it and doing it from memory and you read it out of the book. I'm glad it came out the same. But one thing I will say is on that blog post that got 60,000 reads or whatever, the bucket, it's basically how to create a retirement paycheck from your investment or something. Just Google bucket strategy on my blog, you'll find it. But I actually itemize how we got to that 12,000. So I include the car, I include the roof, I include the furnace, I do the whole breakdown of how we built up that 12,000. It's not in the book, but that there is that level of detail on my blog, the Retirement Manifesto. You can find it there as well.
Absolutely. If you want to put a link later on the comment section, Fritz, later on, by all means do so, or send me, I'll put it on there too.
Okay,
for sure.
yeah, we'll do that.
One of the things I want to point out too, I thought this was critical. Let me just jump around here a little bit. Please do this is retirement tip number 8. Plan to do any major spending required to create your ideal retirement while still working. Man, I cannot stress this enough. I'm going to take this on my own little way. Say, when people are still working is when they should get, I don't know, their roof fixed, when they have the cash flow coming in, because they don't want the stress of getting that replaced right when they went into this foreign thing called retirement. I just thought that was absolutely fantastic. I've said that so many times just in my own thing. I'm like, if you got a big expenditure, spend that sucker now while you still got the paycheck, because if things go a little bit south where you weren't anticipating, you could stay at the job for another year to pay it off. What made you come up with that strategy? Is that personal experience or just what? I think it's fantastic.
Personal experience, talking to friends, reading it somewhere. I've been writing for 5 years, so I've read a lot of stuff, obviously. Again, the point of the book is, what are the keys to a successful retirement? And I was really focused on trying to find the differentiators between people that have a great transition and retirement versus those that struggle. So I did a lot of research on kind of that type of topic. And one of the things that comes up as a differentiator is those that have a successful retirement and a successful transition tend to be the same people that make their major expenditures while they're still working. So that's kind of how, that was kind of the logic behind the book is, over 5 years of writing, hundreds of thousands of words at this point, I couldn't even imagine 250 articles, whatever it is. I basically pulled the stuff that really resonated with me out of that 5 years. What, in a nutshell, like you said, it's not a long book. It's by design. I just wanted it to be the stuff that really matters. So out of my 5-year experience of going through this, what's the stuff that's really core, and what makes the difference between a good retirement and a not so good retirement? And that led me to the keys that are in the book.
No, and just right before that key was a key number 1, in my opinion. You had, or maybe right after that, hold on just a second. You had said, right after, well, anyway, you talk about being debt free. I can't find it. I can't find where I highlighted it. But anyway, you said be debt free. And that is key number 1. I mean, especially, not everyone needs to be debt free, but I'm just telling you, if you can choose one path or the other, you always want to be debt free if you can avoid having some debt when you go into retirement.
And that's another one of those that's kind of like the bucket strategy. Hey, I don't want to keep all my money in cash. The opportunity cost. Hey, I can get a home mortgage for 3%. And I make 8% in the stock market. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Arbitrage it all you want. That's fine. The point is, there's these emotional things that happen when you retire, and just knowing that debt is gone is worth the lost opportunity cost. For me. A lot of people will play the arbitrage and they'll go ahead and mortgage a house and invest it. That's fine. But there's a lot to the emotional side that starts tilting some of these mathematical equations that aren't necessarily the right math number, but they're the right retirement answer. Again, it's a personal decision. Everybody's got to make their own choice. But a lot of those things start tilting when you get into the retirement decisions.
Well, when it comes to mortgaging your house versus investment, I always say, well, if that were true, then you should have no equity at all. You should literally be 100% loan to value. If you really truly believed that the mortgage is that you're missing out on growth opportunities, then why would you have any equity? You should, because Rick, what's his name? Not Rick Edelman. Yeah, he talks about that. Having a mortgage is good. I said, well, if that were true, then you literally should have no equity. And because it might be true, but again, they're looking at a linear rate of return versus a linear debt return, and the two things are completely not. The debt is linear. The rate of return on an equity investment is certainly not linear, as we just witnessed literally in the last month. The most insane month, up 27% in 2 weeks, down 36% 2 weeks previous. It's nuts. That's crazy, man talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You're going to say something.
I was going to say, have you seen some of those charts where they compare this to previous bears? And, it's a XY axis and the hits, the normal bear. They come down pretty fast. But then you look at this one. This is like straight down the Y axis. It is so quick based on every bear in the last couple hundred years. It's really different. Kind of like the unemployment spike. Yeah. You see those unemployment charts. It's almost the same type of thing in reverse on the bear market compared to historical adjustments.
Did you see that one chart on the unemployment? It's like this, like this, like this. And then it's like
Yeah.
It's actually frightening, to be perfectly honest. I sit there and I say,
Yeah.
the damage, and I don't want to get too deep in this, but the damage that has yet to be seen. Now, the interesting thing about the markets, so someone said, what, do you have any thoughts, recognizing growth will likely, I don't know, recognizing growth, but recognizing growth will likely slow. Has that, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase this. Do you have any thoughts on your own investment portfolio, Fritz, given that, potential slowdown, potential that, who knows, this
I'll take it to a higher macro level than that, right? If you just look at the kind of the return to the mean, which I've always been a big fan of return to the mean, right? Over time, things don't stay abnormal forever, right? They revert to the mean. And if you look at all the CAPE ratios and valuation metrics and everything else, the market has been very overvalued for quite a while. So this is not a surprise at all that the bear market happened. If you're still working, it's the best thing that could have happened for you because you're making a more realistic basis of assumptions for your retirement. Yeah. That said, when we did a cash flow analysis basically out to age 95, and I used very conservative numbers. We're like I said, we're staying below a 3.5% withdrawal rate, and I also assumed for our equity growth like 6% per year because I wanted to hedge everything on the conservative side. Because I do think when you've had a couple decades of above average returns in the stock market, chances are we could have a decade or two of below average returns, during retirement. Yeah. I didn't want to plan for 10% annual returns and get burned with a 6%. Yeah. I'd rather plan a 6% and get a nice surprise if it goes to 10. Okay, great. We can spend some more. Hey, I'll get a car a year earlier than I thought I would. Much easier to make adjustments up than to make adjustments down.
Yeah, well, actually, it's ironic because I was just talking to a guy today who was approved for he's not in the best health. He's approved for $500,000 of life insurance. He says, "Do you think they'll reapprove me?" I said, "You can always approve for less, but they're never going to approve you for more if you and without going through underwriting." So this exact opposite. You're saying, "Hey, it's easier if you're expecting 6 to spend the 10 than to expecting 10 if you only get the 6."
Right.
Ray says he wants to place a large order. Can Fritz sign book plates? I don't know what a book plate is, but maybe I'll leave that up to you and your publisher or something like that, Fritz, or maybe have Ray contact you directly.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, why don't you email Josh, and Josh can put us in touch, and we can just trade an email or phone call on that. I don't know what that means, but I can talk to my publisher and see what we can do.
Yeah. So again, Fritz's website is theretirementmanifesto.com. Just go directly to Fritz. theretirementmanifesto.com, and by all means drop my name if anyone, we don't have any relationship other than Fritz that bought me some kind of apple fritters or something like that up in
good memory, Mercier's Orchard. How could you forget Mercier's Orchard? Yeah, the fried pies, man, those are amazing.
Other than that, but by all means just reach out to Fritz. I don't
and I'll give my email on here. I don't mind. It's Fritz, Fritz at The Retirement Manifesto, no spaces. It's kind of like the Communist Manifesto. It's got the in it. That always throws people. Fritz at theretirementmanifesto.com, and I'll get the email. So shoot me an email. We'll talk about it.
Absolutely. And
there's also a page. I was going to say there's also a page on my blog. If you go there, there's a separate page just on my book, so you can read some reviews about the book. You can order it there if you want. I don't care if you order it there or Amazon; it doesn't matter. But just so you know, there's a book page on my blog as well.
Yeah, sweet, man. And remember, it's not ready yet. So it's, what do you say, the first week of May? Is that what we said, Fritz?
May 5th, it'll hit the stores. It's going to go nationwide. They're still negotiating with the different retailers, but, probably Barnes & Nobles, hopefully Target. It'll be in a lot of major retailers coast to coast.
So this is a good question. Let me ask you. So this is I hate to even say controversial because I think every person is unique. We're getting a lot of, and I'm okay with reverse mortgages. I am. I don't have any. They're not freaking scams like Dave Ramsey says, but they are costly. There's no two ways around that. So Steve says, how do you feel about reverse mortgages? Just any thoughts on it? He asks even more specific, but just what's your thoughts on reverse mortgages, Fritz?
Yeah, that's a good question. You got some above average listeners or followers there, Josh. Those are good questions. Personally, I've not pursued it. I always viewed it as kind of as an ultimate safety valve if you really get in trouble. If you look at, I don't know if it's Michael Kitces or Wade Pfau, but one of them, Wade Pfau has a really good approach on it where he says, no, it should be a fundamental part of your strategy. I've not studied it that closely. Okay. It's not something I'm doing, but I know there's two camps on it. to Josh's point, it's expensive. That's the only thing. I'm cheap. I tend to avoid things that cost a lot of money up front. And I know the closing costs and whatnot are supposedly quite high.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see what else we got here. So Ray says at the economic seminars, yikes, Barkey. At the economic seminars he runs at SMU, he's going to give away finance-oriented books. That's cool, man. Right on, Ray. That's good stuff. Get Fritz
awesome.
Out there. Most folks recommend 50-50 stock bond allocation when you're close to retirement. Yep. Can you clarify the new allocation you were referencing given this downturn?
Sure. That's a good lead in actually. So if you do the straight bucket math, and it's actually in the book, if you do 3 years of cash, 5 years of bonds, and the rest in equities, and you have like 25 to 30x your annual spending, if you do the math, that's about a 70-30.
Yeah.
That's on the higher end of aggression for me. I wouldn't be comfortable with that. My comfort level is kind of 50-50 to maybe 60-40, 60 equity. When I told you I was selling a little bit more cash towards the end of last year, I was actually right at 50-50. I had 50% equity, probably, 40% bonds and some other stuff. And then, 10% cash, whatever. But the equity part's what matters, right? And it was about 50% equity. What I did in March as the market was tanking, again, I'm not a market timer, but I didn't want my asset allocation to get much lower than that because you do have to have enough stocks to keep up with inflation, right? Inflation is another big risk. So what I did is as the market was coming down, and I got burned in 2008 when it dropped. I put all my money in too quick, tried to catch the falling knife. It kept falling. And I just sat there and, eventually came back. I was fine, right? But I said, I'm going to try a different approach this time. So what I've been doing in this volatility is every 5% move down in the market, I move the equivalent of 1% of my portfolio from bonds into stocks, maybe some cash. And then I literally take a screenshot of where the market's at when I do the trade. I go on my calculator, I multiply it times 0.95, I do a screenshot of that, and I say, okay, so I could pull up on my phone right now, and I know where the next tranche is that I'm waiting for to buy. And every time it moves down 5%, I'll throw one. Now that it's gotten lower, back late March when it's down 35%, I was doing 2% of my net worth. The lower it went, the higher amounts I was moving over. But it's a logical way to do it where you're buying some on the cheap. You're not going to make a mistake. It's basically an accelerated dollar cost averaging.
It's like a dollar cost averaging on steroids. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or a very frequent rebalancing. You can argue with either one, but that's kind of the approach I've taken. So right now with the volatility, my asset allocation is obviously moving around a little bit. I would guess with a little bit of a rebound, obviously I've done well, right? Because I moved 2% of my net worth at the very bottom of this thing and it's written up. So I'm probably around 55% of assets right now in equity. Again, anywhere between 50 and 60, I'm fine with that. That's kind of my target.
Well, I think we also have to look too, Fritz, is that the idea that bonds are a reprieve. I mean, if you just look at what happened to the treasury market, man, it didn't take as much of a hit as the stocks. Yeah. It's down like 15% in a week's time.
Yeah, it was crazy. Munis are getting hit, right? Yeah.
It's nuts. And so I just always take umbrage to some degree of like, oh, bonds are my safe space. They're like, no, they're not. I mean, the only safe space is cash, CDs, and historically Ginnie Mae's. And who knows, that could change. But I mean, cash and CDs are the only thing for a safe space that bonds don't have. So when people say, well, stocks will have lower growth, and I use a 7.5% rate of return projected going forward. And that's a nominal rate of return. And the reason is I use a 3% inflation rate. And so we're looking at 4.5, which is exactly what Vanguard models say. Now they're saying for 10 years, I'm saying it for, whenever I run a plan, is that will be, if you're 40 or 50, you got 40 years to live, you're saying for 40 years. Either way, I'm using a 4.5% real rate of return, which is 7.5 nominal without factoring inflation. But bonds, not only are they not a safe space, but you're literally losing money after taxes and inflation. So I don't think the idea that a 30-70 portfolio necessarily is the way to go to deal with the volatility, because there's no evidence that will keep you from getting hammered. There is no.
Yeah, and I'll tell you two things on top of that. You're at the end of a 30-year bear market in bonds, right? Reversion to mean, right? Remember that reversion to mean. You're not going to have 30 years of above average returns in bonds. You're probably going to have an extended period of below return. So that's number one.
30-year bull market.
Yeah. Number two is, I'm a big fan of asset allocation, diversification. I've got some commodity stuff. I've got some, what I did too, I've got, it's probably 5% of my net worth that's just sitting over there in a little TD Ameritrade account, and it's just my stupid money, right? And I trade options. I do all kinds of stupid stuff that keeps me busy. If I get the itch to trade, I can trade around in that, and it's not going to hurt anything. So I've got some alternative stuff, REITs, obviously. I think in this environment where things have been so crazy for so long, diversification is the only way you can play it. You just don't know what's going to happen to anything. That's not coronavirus.
I'm saying, man, where's your mask? Where's your mask?
Yeah.
Social distancing.
Yeah.
Social distancing. So somebody, Rick says, what do you think? Individual stocks or mutual funds? Or I'll say mutual funds / ETFs. What's your thoughts on that?
100% mutual funds.
Or ETFs, right? I mean,
yeah, or ETFs. I don't care.
Right.
The only individual stocks I touch is that stupid money I was talking about. I'll trade options. I was selling some ExxonMobil puts. I don't know if any of you guys trade options, but I was selling some puts on ExxonMobil just because the move on oil and the move on the oil company stocks were so big. But those are pure speculation bets. I'm not going to sit there and do analysis on 30 companies to get an appropriately diversified portfolio. A lot of people like that. Knock yourself out. I've been mutual funds my whole life.
I could not agree more. Absolutely. How many years are you taking to do your Roth conversion? Says my man from Bernie.
I did my first one when I was 56 years old, and I'm planning on doing them until I'm 72.
Okay.
So basically, now we'll see what happens with the tax laws, right? What I'm doing right now, when Trump came in, the new tax laws, if you're married, not so much if you're not married, but if you're married, filed jointly, man, there's a huge reduction in those marginal tax rates. Yeah. So right now, I'm really hitting them pretty hard. If they stay where they're at, I may get through it, before I'm at 72. But my goal would be get as much of it over as I can in as low a tax bracket. I personally, again, I'm not an advisor, blah, 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 all the disclaimers, but I can't envision how we're not going to have higher tax rates by the time I'm in my 70s. So the more I can get out now under what is, again, reversion to mean, we are in a very below average marginal tax situation right now. And I'm a big fan of getting as much of it out as you can, while the getting's good. So
I could not agree more. 100%. So Big E from Bernie he's doing it as basically he's amortizing it over until he's 72, until he hits his RMD stage, which makes sense. But that might not be the way for you. But I think as a ballpark, that's a good way to look at it. Say, look, I want to make sure that when RMDs come, I have none. I think that's a benchmark everyone should shoot for sure.
As long as you don't kick yourself into too high of a marginal tax rate to get there, right? If you're going to have a couple $100,000 left or whatever it ends up being, that's the problem. All of us baby boomers, especially if you had kind of the traditional 401k type of benefit, they didn't have Roths back then, right? We were all doing before tax contributions, and that was 30 years ago. So you compound that stuff, and you've got a bunch of money sitting in before tax. All that to say, be careful about going too far. But you look at the 20. I don't want to quote this from memory, but you can get up into the $300,000 range and you're still in the 24, 26%.
Yeah, right. 24, dude. 24.
Yeah, historically, that's really low. So you can move big amounts out of an IRA, for a couple of years yet anyway.
And what they're going to do too, Fritz, is they're going to make the Medicare premiums even more subject to means testing.
Great.
And that's inevitable in my opinion. That's regardless of Trump, regardless of what's his name, Biden. It doesn't matter. I mean, the facts are Medicare is certainly in a world of hurt compared to Social Security, which is not funded very well either.
Right.
So all that stuff is going to be means tested. So people who have a big fat AGI, be subject to more tax.
And I actually include a lot of that in the book too. I talk about 21st century considerations, and one of them is exactly that. Our government, not just the U.S. I mean, this is a global issue. Our governments have a lot of promises that they've made that are going to get very expensive as this demographic wave of baby boomers moves through the system.
Yep.
So either the benefits are going to get cut, they're going to get more means tested, or the tax rates are going to go up. To me, I don't know how it can be any other way.
But. I mean, if they want, it's got to be. There's literally no other way around that.
Yeah.
Sean says F fund and the TSP. Sean, I can't stand the F fund. If you're going to be in bonds, you might as well be in the G fund, in my opinion. But Fritz, are you familiar at all with the TSP? Any thoughts on that?
No, I'm not. No.
The F fund is just corporate bonds, and the G fund is the G fund of TSP is kind of like a stable value fund, essentially, which it gives you. I'm not sure what it's doing now, maybe 2 with no downside risk, and the F fund is, I don't even know what's the 2.5, something like that. Let's keep reading here. Given them the more fiscal debt we've incurred, thoughts on means testing or eliminating the. I don't want to. I mean. So I get a lot of questions on Roth stuff a lot, and it's so speculative, Carl. I wouldn't even bother with it. So the question, Fritz, is you think they could get rid of like the Roth,
right,
or maybe they'll come back and say, sorry, we're going to take tax out of there.
who knows? Who knows? I could potentially see where they could kick in like an RMD on a Roth. I could see that maybe as something they would do. I can't see how they could tax it once you've already paid tax to get it there. So who knows? It's speculation.
Confidence in the TC Life Cycle Fund from TIA. I don't know what that is. Hey, do you know? Let me ask you a question. A couple comments on Delta. I know some Delta pals. I haven't spoken to them since this. You know anyone at Delta? Are they hurting down there, Fritz?
I don't know. I don't know how they couldn't be. I haven't followed the stock. I don't do much with the airlines, but I flew. I got 1 million miles with Delta. I flew all around the world in my job, so I was a very global business guy. But I don't know how they're doing. But I can't imagine how they couldn't be really struggling. I mean, the few planes that are still flying have got to be empty, right? So it'll come back. It's a question how long can they hold their breath, But then there'll be bailout money for them. So I don't know.
Yeah, me either. It's let's see. Are you afraid of big inflation because all the money being printed?
Fair question. Let's not kid ourselves. How many times have I said this? Reversion to the mean. We've been in a well below average inflation market. So I think I mentioned earlier. I'm trying to keep a minimum of 50% allocated to stocks, because you have to have that higher growth rate to keep up with inflation.
100%.
I think it's a real. I think it's a. I'm not an alarmist.
Right.
I'm a realist, and especially now with the 2 trillion or whatever this latest thing was. What are you going to do? We're in a crisis. You got to do what you got to do. But let's not be naive and think that isn't going to have potentially some long-term unintended consequences, which is basically inflation, right? Or weakening dollar,
No, we don't know. We've never been through it. That's the crazy thing. We don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
The one thing you can know is not having a debt means you don't have to pay that's ultimately why I just love look, I got a big fat mortgage on this house right now. And it's my biggest pet peeve of mine. And it is what it is. I mean, you got to have a place to raise 4 kids. I get all that. But man alive, if I didn't have this mortgage, immediately my cash needs would drop significantly. And it'd be liberating like no one I couldn't imagine. But
and your living expenses are buffered from inflation as long as you stay in that same house. So yeah.
And then it's the imputed income. I don't want to get into that, but I mean, there's so many benefits to having our house paid off and not carrying debt into retirement. That way you don't have to worry about it. I mean, you gotta worry, but then you can worry about your things you really need to worry to live, your health. And you talk a lot about that real quick. I want to kind of get back to this, and we'll get you out of here in a second, because usually about 8:30 or so I start to hit a wall. Sometimes 9, sometimes not.
You're a beast, by the way. I can't believe the quality and the frequency of the content that you produce. You're my hero. You're very good at what you do. So
I'd say I would challenge you on quality, but the quantity I don't for sure.
But those guests that you have, especially those authors, man, those guests are first top notch, Josh.
Well, it's
I'm busted on you.
It's well, I did have I had Larry Kotlikoff on one of my first interviews, and I had no subscribers at that point. It's like literally probably I just started my YouTube channel like a month earlier, and the audio sucked. It was all it was bad. That was before I could do this, and it's too bad because I'd like to bring. I'm a big fan of Kotlikoff. Yeah, and that would have been it was a good interview, but it was just it wasn't great, and I just It was sad because like, man, of all the times to have a crappy interview, then I interviewed this guy out of Gray Steel, Jonathan Sullivan, who's a PhD MD up in Michigan, who runs a weightlifting firm called Gray, Grey. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel. And we had a great interview. And I forgot to hit record, Fritz. I was like,
oh man,
I forgot to hit record. And it was a freaking, and I can't, he goes by Sully. And I said, I am hesitant to go back to him again, because it's like, man, Yeah, he's cool. I mean, he's a nice guy. He's a funny
Yeah.
guy. But just like, because he had written a book called The Barbell Prescription for older people. You know what I'm saying? He says, look, don't be afraid to freaking, get under a barbell, even if you're getting older, because that helps your bones. Anyway,
I'm doing weight work. It's actually in here. I talk about fitness quite a bit in the book
you
as well.
You talk about CrossFit.
Yeah.
So let's stop with I want to ask you, personal challenge. And I just want you to, do you recall writing this? And I'd like for you to talk on this because I actually thought it was, you say it seems pretty simplistic, but talk a little bit on the personal challenge, because I do think if you retire without having a gauge of what you're going to do, I've seen this in my own very eye. Men, in particularly, they become bored and they get angry, and they get angry towards a spouse. They watch, Fox if it's on the right, MSNBC, CNN if they're on the left. They just start getting they lose their sense of purpose, and they start getting paranoid to some extent, and then they get big, heavy, and not good. And that's not good. So talk about the personal challenge, if you
will. I'll be a little bit cryptic, because to me that's kind of the icing on the cake, so to speak. That's really the kind of, to me, the climax of the book. But basically the concept is the softer side of stuff in retirement is not something you've normally done, right? You've been busy in your career, you're focused on the financials. Suddenly you're home and you're retired, and you're, like you just said, right? You got the guys that sit around and watch TV all day. Yeah. So how do you learn how to do that? So I ended the book with a personal challenge, which is basically, it'd be interesting to see how many people take me up on it. I have no idea, right? If this book sells millions, I could be going, what was I thinking? But the concept is, instead of just reading about this stuff that I've been talking about, here's a chance for you to apply it if you choose to accept the challenge. And there's a deliverable at the end and a reward if they do it, type of thing, potentially. And I just thought it was a creative way to kind of finish things up, and kind of, I don't like just finishing a book and then they put it on the shelf. I like to have it where it leaves people with something to think about and potentially do. And this book kind of leaves people with something to do if they decide to pursue it. How's that for a summary?
It's man, it's interactive. That's what I want to say. It's interactive, that Fritz is challenging you, and he's even saying, when you send me that email, he's inviting you to flood his inbox with stuff. Yeah. Which going back to what he said, and if you look at some of the stuff in his book, he talks about being on a plane, seeing a World War II vet, and going up to him in the middle of the aisle, just asking him questions that turned into a 45-minute conversation, and learning about retirement from that. That's the kind of stuff that separates Fritz from, I think, a lot of bloggers. It's easy to write a blog. It's just not, but anyone could do that. But it's not easy to take the time to find out really what worked and what is working for people, so that way Fritz could use it in his own personal retirement with him and his better half, Jackie. And trust me, she is his better half.
Absolutely.
But also to be able to share that with you guys and ladies in a book. And so the whole point about the personal challenges is a way for you to kind of, I don't know, I'd say help Fritz in some way with his research to help other people, if that makes sense. Because Fritz has a platform, and I have a platform, and you have the knowledge. I'm talking to my audience here, that when you read his book, you might say, I can send some info to Fritz, and he'll do what he wants with it. I don't know, but at the end of the day, some of that stuff can be used to help your neighbor, your fellow man who needs help, because there are a lot of people that they don't know where to turn, and everyone's trying to sell them stuff, everyone's trying to scare them to death, and it doesn't have to be like that. So anyway, I enjoyed very much that personal challenge, because you don't see that often. Like you said, it might inundate your inbox. Well, so be it. You know what I'm saying?
My editor, when I submitted that, I had a managing editor that I was working with, and she got it. She goes, "You sure you want to put that in there?" I was like, "Yeah, I want to put it in." And she goes, "Just make sure you think about it before we publish the book." And I said, "No, I've thought about it. I'm good." So she goes, "What if this book sells a lot?" And I said, there aren't going to be that many people take me up on it. She goes, "I think you might be surprised. So we'll see. I'm willing to tell you, what the heck, that one of the things is be curious, right? And seek adventure. I'm open for it. I think it'll be fun. So we'll see."
It's a good problem to have if it were to come like that. That's a good problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So again,
nobody knows what we're talking about, Josh. They're all like, "What are you talking about?" I have no idea what they're talking about. This personal challenge.
That's why they got to read. We've already had a number of people who who pre-ordered it, man.
Appreciate it,
Carl-
guys.
Carl says he feels like we're the two uncles he never had.
Very cool.
So Fritz's blog is theretirementmanifesto.com, literally theretirementmanifesto.com. Pre-orders are available of this book, and it won't be ready until next month. Next month is 3 weeks away. The more you order, I say more you, the more you all order, the more of a bump it'll get, Fritz. And look, I've done books myself, and when it comes out the gate fast, I'm telling you, it helps big time. So if you do pre-order, it is a good, and how much does it cost, Fritz?
Like $13.
Yeah, $13 for the hard copy. Like I said, the Kindle Unlimited is free. I think the regular Kindle is $9.99, something like that.
It's cheap.
It's without question. It's cheap.
And then the ones you're giving away are even cheaper. You're giving away 2 free ones.
Speaking of which, before we let everybody go, remember, we have to, if you don't, I saw Dan, my man Dan up in Massachusetts. The comments, you can't do comments until we're done here. So the chat isn't a comment, unfortunately. So if you could, guys, go back when we're done here, and I put this video up tomorrow. I know this is going to seem kind of weird, but if you could, and just say book or some kind of comment, and I got 2 free books that Fritz has given me. No one else has these. No one else has these. So if you could go there and put book or something like that, I'll choose randomly. Randomly, I'll choose who will get the books.
Tom Brady.
Yeah, Tom Brady, exactly. My man Pulverizer said, just don't say Pink Floyd, because Fritz, do you like Pink Floyd, that band? I can't.
I hate to tell you, I do like them. I do like Pink Floyd. I'm sorry.
How about The Who? Tell me you like The Who.
I like The Who, absolutely. That's the best scream in rock and roll.
Roger Daltrey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, without question. The Who is the most underrated English band of all time. All time. Oh.
I would take The Who over Pink Floyd anytime. I'll give you that.
Well, that's the kind of stuff I wanted to hear, because Pink Floyd, it's like, it bores me. The Who, I'm like, man, this is good music. So good music. I like to hear that. All right. Yeah. Fritz, to let you guys go. We got a lot of people saying thanks. Carl says we were the sane ones in the family tree. Appreciate it, Fritz. Have a good night. Tell Jackie big hugs, and
all right, thanks, man. We'll see you when all this Corona thing comes over. We'll get back together, and I'll get you another one of those fried pies.
I'm there, man. Love you, brother.
Right. Thanks, man.
See you. Thanks for being here, everybody. See you.
Bye.